Hi, welcome to my American Ethnic Studies final project presentation. I'm doing a video for my dorm room. So my name is Elijah Miller, and I'm doing my topic over food. The food I chose was authentic style Japanese ramen. And in the outline for this, we were supposed to talk about other names for it, and actually it was originally called shinasoba, which is roughly translated to Chinese noodles. Why I'm choosing this is because it's one of my favorite foods. I've had it a few times in my life and I've just loved it. And when I was trying to decide what food I really want to do it over, I was actually wearing this shirt and I was like, hey, why not talk about ramen? Alright, so first let's talk about the main ingredients and what goes into it. There are 6 big types of ingredients. There is the broth, there is flavoring, there is the noodles, usually an egg, some type of protein, and normal other toppings like green onions. So my idea was that I was going to make ramen for this video. But I realized I did not have the resources or the time to do so because I had no idea how much went into actually making it. So from a recipe I found online, to make the broth alone, you need 4 pounds of pig hocks and trotters, 2 pounds of chicken backs, 1 pound of chicken feet, and then you basically marinate this in like water, garlic, ginger, leeks, onions, oyster mushrooms, heavy stock, and then water and onions, and you just let this simmer for like 12 to 18 hours. And being in the dorms, I didn't really have that luxury. I couldn't really make that, so I neglected to actually prepare a bowl. Next, there's the different type of flavorings that go into this, like different type of seasonings besides the broth. A lot of times it's like salt or soy sauce or what they call tahini. Next is the noodles. The noodles you can usually get in your typical Asian markets. Back in the day, they used to be made from wheat noodles or wheat flour, and it kind of produced like this yellow-looking noodle, and it was very good and tasty. A lot of times, typical authentic ramen is made with a soft-boiled egg. So they will soft boil an egg and usually cut it in half, and usually use like 1/2 or maybe both halves for the bowl, and let it kind of be a little bit gooey inside and just let it kind of run in with the broth, and it's usually really good. Next, one of the most important parts of the ramen is the protein. So most of the time they use some sort of pork belly. So from the recipe I found online, usually what you do is you take a 1.5 pound slab of boneless pork belly, and you season it in a saucepan, and a larger saucepan, so it's simmering in there, and you add water and soy sauce and white grape juice and lemon juice and sugar, onions, garlic, ginger, shallots, and black peppercorn. So there's a lot of seasoning that goes into the meat. It tries to soak up all that flavor, and that's usually like one of the highlights of the dish is the meat and the protein. Another thing that you can do is have little other toppings. Some people add like green onions chopped up, and other people add gnocchi. That's also pretty popular. Next, let's talk about the history and the cultural significance of ramen. So I did not know that authentic ramen was originally from China. There are a few theories that I found about how it migrated over to Japan. The first is that there was a scholar named Shu Shensi that he brought over, they theorized that he brought over a recipe from China to Japan when he was fleeing Chinese rule to become a advisor for a lord. A lot of people don't think this is mostly speculation because there's never been a record of him actually making ramen for this lord. The more plausible and theory that people think actually happened was in Tokyo there was a restaurant named Rai Rai Ken that opened up, and it was ran by Chinese cooks. And these Chinese cooks started selling shinasoba, which is Chinese noodles. And so this got really popular with a lot of people. Something I found really interesting was that for a while it was illegal to produce ramen. After World War II, after Japan was bombed by the U.S., they suffered from food shortages, and they suffered from a very big famine. So in efforts to help control the damage, the Japanese government, they put a lot of regulations on food supplies and restaurants and food carts. So for several years it was actually illegal to make a profit selling food from restaurants and food carts. And so the typical flour or wheat flour that was used to make the noodles was actually on the black market for several years, and a lot of people would try to get a hold of this, and they would try making noodles and selling it like illegally, just privately and whatnot. And so a lot of times it would end up in jail times and fines if you were caught selling ramen. But after a few years, Japan started building more infrastructure, and they started having a lot of building going on. Because of this, there's a lot of workers that needed to be fed, and so ramen became a lot more popular because it was quick and easy, and it was really good for a lot of people, and it was really good for keeping workers energized. So one thing is that we cannot really skip over when talking about ramen is instant ramen. The development of instant ramen took place in about the 1950s, and it was actually commercially advertised for middle-class women and children because it was seen as more of a luxury than like a cheap fast food like we consider it today. It was because ramen was considered a delicacy. It was also originally created to help fight the food shortages in Japan, and so it was easy to produce. It was fast, quick, easy. It was cheap. So that's what they originally did to help fight back against the food shortages and famine. So that's what I learned in my history of ramen and looking into that, and I'm looking forward to enjoying more bowls of it, and I hope I educated you in some little pieces of history. Thank you.